Is it still possible to make a no-budget feature in 2024 and beyond? Today I'm sitting down with indie filmmaker Tim Wolak, who recently released his second feature film, Princess Spooky. Tim and I discuss his experience making a no-budget feature in 2024, comparing that experience to making a feature film back in 2015, and how he was able to secure traditional distribution. Tim, thank you so much for coming on today. What I find interesting, there's a couple common things between us in that we're both Northwest Indiana boys, but we also decided to stay home and make films instead of going to Hollywood. So I'm curious, was that ever in the cards for you, or is this kind of the path that you're on? What you always hoped, would be how you would make films?
Well, it's an excellent question. It's one that you're not the first person to ask that, because it is kind of like when people think about, in a vacuum, they think about someone that wants to go make movies. They think, oh yeah, they have to go to Hollywood. That's what happens. And that's not for everyone. It's kind of like I mentioned about like college, for instance. Like college isn't for everyone, and college was definitely not something for me. But film school was, because I'm just so passionate about it, and I felt like, well, I need to meet these other people. I need to network, and I need to, I know that there's some basic things you need to kind of get the ball rolling. Um, and Hollywood in general, like even I think about now, if I were to become successful enough where like I could afford Hollywood, because that's the main thing for me, was cost. Like I did have money saved up at a certain point right after film school. I happened to be lucky. I was fortunate enough to have some money saved up at that time, and I could have gone. I contemplated basically being a sixth roommate to this group of people that I went to film school with, who they did move out to Hollywood, and I kind of threw my hat in the ring. I said, "Hey, if you got a couch, I got some money," and you know, I would have been able to kind of sustain myself for a little bit with that money I had, and then in the meantime, ideally, I would have found a job and all that. But also, I realized, besides the cost factor being a huge problem, and this is 10 years ago, obviously, more than 10 years ago now at this point that I almost moved out there. Um, Inflation now, I can't imagine, out there. But in the Midwest, it's just when you're an independent filmmaker, as you know, Alex, I mean, with cashing out with your film, which I'm a huge fan of, it's very inexpensive to shoot at certain locations in the Midwest, because it's kind of a novelty for some people, for business owners, for family, friends, what have you. If you just ask, there's a good chance that people will say, yeah, well, yeah, if you shoot around this time or this area, that's fine, or I can let you borrow this or do this. Like, people get excited. It's kind of like, that's the main thing. You kind of got to get people excited to be a part of something. And in Hollywood, you have to deal with so much red tape if you actually want to do things legitimately out there. Here you can get away with just asking people. If you know the property owner, the business owner, you can just call them up and say, hey, can I film here? Or, explain what you're doing. Or, you might know someone that knows someone, that kind of thing. And it feels a lot more free, as far as like creatively, like I was able to work with the parks department in, Lake County, Indiana. And I was able to film at, some of the county parks, for free. I was not charged anything. They let me dig up a grave for a fake corpse for my last film, and they closed off roadways and stuff in the park for me. The park manager there, Jennifer, is fantastic at Stony Run, and she was so excited that I came back for the newest film. And I don't feel like that's something you can do in Hollywood without having a lot of money. And then that's, I don't have any money. I'm, I, I'm a thrift store guy. I mean, you see all this stuff here in my room. This is these CDs and tapes and all this, my collectibles. It's thrift store stuff and deals. And I'm not a, rich guy. I'm not someone that just has money to spend. I like making cool things with cool people who want to make weird things together. And I just kind of lucked out. And from the get-go after high school, when I started working with Trey on things, I realized the potential of the Midwest, and how you don't need to be on the East Coast or the West Coast or anything like that in order to make things. You don't need to ask, you don't need the East or West Coast permission. You don't need the powers that be, the gatekeepers in order to make something. You can go, and if you have even less money than what I have, which is not that much, like, you could go to like a Walmart and buy like the cheapest camcorder, and you could go make something, and you don't have to ask permission to make something. You just ask your friends, you ask your family, hey, do you want to be a part of this? Will you be in this? Can I borrow you for like, an hour or two and shoot something? And writing is free. So there's no reason to move to a specific, very expensive place just because that's where the movers and shakers are with all the money. And writing, you can live anywhere, if the words are the only thing that matters. That's my goal in life, is to be a writer and be able to live wherever I want, wherever I'm comfortable. And my personality type sort of fits with that. Like you and I, obviously we're close enough where I can be my kind of, myself around you. But in general, when I meet new people, or when I'm around big crowds of people, I'm a very quiet, introverted person. And Hollywood, if I was to go there, that's kind of where you would really need to sort of like embed yourself and kind of be a squeaky wheel and sort of make a lot of racket and I don't like that idea, because it feels very untrue to who I am. And I am very, Midwestern is baked into me as a person. I am a Hoosier. My parents are from Chicago. It's who I am. So it would feel unnatural for me to go there and try and make something happen while spending money I don't have, So the Midwest just kind of felt more cozy, and it felt more, accessible to create things that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. Where if I wanted to shoot at a county park in California, for instance, for the amount of days that I shot for both my films, that alone would cost so many, probably hundreds of thousands of dollars. For them to shut down roads in a county park and somewhere in California, no, it's not going to happen. Northwest Indiana, yeah, I talked to the Parks Department. They printed out papers, said I had permission. I didn't get charged anything. The manager and her family came out and watched us film and asked a lot of questions. And, to them, we were Hollywood. We made a movie. We made 2 movies now. So,
So I'm really curious. Your last film came out in 2015, which is Beware the Clowns, or Ku Klux Clowns, as you had a working title there for a minute. I'm curious, what is the biggest differences between now making Princess Spooky and making that film back? I'm assuming you probably filmed it, 2013, 2014-ish, and came out in 2015?
So we filmed it in the spring of 2014, and then it actually didn't have its premiere until, I want to say it didn't premiere until 2016. I believe it was July of 2016. I had written it in 2013, shortly before, was it 2013? The plan was to try and get it out before the end of 2015, which it technically, it was picture locked by the end of 2015, which I'm very proud of. I wrote the film based on the short trailer script that I had written for the class for school, like in March or so of 2014. And then I wrote a feature script based on that. And we went into pre-production in mid to late 2014. And we filmed in the spring of 2015. I had a picture locked by the end of 2015. And our composer, who also worked on Princess Spooky, very talented guy, does on-set stuff, Colin Leanhan. He is fantastic. And at that time, it was his first film that he actually composed fully composed. And he did, some sound design and editing and stuff in it. So he's kind of a one-man band. I'm strictly like, writing is what I want to do. I did everything else on it except for sound, basically. And so it kind of had that little bit of a delay. But it was a learning process. It was really like learning on the go with that one. So this time around with Princess Spooky, I kind of knew I needed to temper what I was trying to do, basically. I had, after I did Clowns, I did reach out to some distributors at that time in 2016. One of them being a place called Synapse Films, which is actually based up, I believe in Michigan is technically where they're based out of, but they release a lot of really, great kind of underground, low budget, schlocky stuff. I mean, going back from the 70s throughout the 90s and now I believe even the early 2000s they have some stuff. But and that was the coolest experience about that was the owner president of the company. He actually, I was able to get on the phone with him and he did watch my film and he gave me a really fantastic compliment that I think some people might interpret as like a backhanded compliment, but it was like oh yeah, we watched it and we loved it, and it was, we're like, whoa, wow, this isn't just a couple of guys fucking around in their backyard, like this is a real movie. And I was so proud. I was like, oh yeah, like we're above just some guys with a camcorder that don't know framing and that are running around just throwing bloods on naked women and whatever. Like we're a real movie. Like this guy gave us like that compliment, and I was like, wow. And he said keep in contact with him and send me anything else I make in the future. And he said at that time it just was not a good fit for them. They weren't looking to release something so underground, basically, but he really liked it and gave me a huge compliment and kind of kept me going. I was like, oh well, like that means like we do something else like this, maybe go a little bit further in quality, then hey, why not, like something could happen. And so yeah, I kind of kept going, and then I self-distributed the film for a while, and in 2017 I had written a script that I attempted to get off the ground as a film called Babysitter Needed, which I was trying to implement what I learned from Clowns, but I think at that point I was sort of exhausted, so I think that's why that fizzled out. But I know that that's one of the screenplays that I know I sent to you. I talked to you about it, and you read it at the time, and you had some great notes and good questions, and kind of help me go through and kill some aspects of it and go through and rethink and polish it a little more. But I was very I just feel like I was mentally exhausted at that time, and it kind of fell apart. We did a short teaser trailer for it, and I just it just kind of fell apart. But I do feel like even through that failure of that film, like just not getting off the ground, I learned something from that. And now it's like, it's been, nearing 10 years since Clowns was released. The independent cinema, atmosphere now is, I feel like it's even more open now, I guess. There's so many streaming platforms now compared to what there was in 2013 to, 2016. It's a drastic difference. It's kind of crazy. Beware of the Clowns came out at a point when video rental stores were still around, and I had Clowns, like when I was self-distributing it, I had it at local rental stores that were mom and pop owned still at the time in Northwest Indiana. These there was one in Crown Point, and there was one in Munster, there was one in Hammond, and they all carried Beware of the Clowns, and they even had a sticker on the front that was like, oh yeah, like locally made film. And it was like, that was something I always kind of dreamed of growing up, was like, wouldn't it be cool to make something that ended up in a place like this, like at a video store? Like, that's so cool. And like at the time I liked making stories up and whatever, but I wasn't sure if it was going to be film or books or whatever. At that time when I was a kid, it was like, I don't know if I want anyone to read my stories, like that kind of like embarrassment of creation. But with Clowns, it got to do a lot of things that I didn't expect, even when we were self-distributing. And now it's like I learned from making Clowns, scale things back, make it more manageable for myself. And the other thing was like kind of keep things a little simpler as far as story goes. Just don't attempt to like overwhelm yourself necessarily, because It's hard enough to make a movie in general, but if you overcomplicate things, if you overwrite things, if you try and bite off too much, you can, you'll waste money, you'll waste people's time, you won't have a finished product. It's better to have, something that's done and complete, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, at least you finish something and you learn something along the way. And we were fortunate enough with Spooky where um, it worked out where we kept it small and we were able to get it shot in a really efficient timeline. And the other thing, I think, when I made Clowns, I wasn't really thinking about I wasn't seriously thinking about hey, are we going to get distribution? I thought, and this was the same kind of thought as everyone involved with that project, was let's see if we can do it. Can we make a feature film? Because we all wanted to do something in filmmaking, in all the different aspects that we were all working on it, and we thought, let's put on a show. Basically, let's everyone liked the script enough to be like, yeah, let's do this. And I was just surrounded by a group of people that were as excited as I was, and it's hard to get people on board with something like that. And so I learned how to keep people excited. I learned how to kind of wrangle people, and ideally wrangle less people with films going forward if I'm going to keep directing things. I don't know. It's hard to explain all the things I that have changed and that I learned, but it just kind of feels natural, like a natural evolution. It's like kind of paring down things. Like, do I really need this character? Do I really need this set piece? Can I do this, and can I put these together and still get the same thing across? And you learn by doing. And this film, after Clowns was self-distributed and I didn't hear back from distributors for a while, I don't want to say abandoned the film, but I kind of stopped pushing it as much. I kind of felt a little bit defeated. I noticed that there was a lot of boutique labels popping up, and like Vinegar Syndrome. I'm a huge fan of Vinegar Syndrome and all their partner labels. I own, so many different random, obscure, strange, crazy films I wouldn't have heard about if it weren't for this company. And they kind of popped up about a decade or so ago. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. And since then, there's been a ton of other labels that have done similar things that specialize in shot on video or, preserving certain weird genres of film. And so I kind of had my eye on those kind of things. And then, around 2019, when I moved out here to the South Bend area, I thought about Clowns again. And I thought about, wow, I haven't tried to make a movie since 2017 when, Babysitter Needed fell apart. And Clowns was so long ago now. I was like, I want to do something and show that, I learned something. I want to show people, hey, I learned. I can do something even better than Clowns now. And I thought, well, why not promote Clowns again? And maybe it's been a few years enough where, maybe there's some sort of unknown nostalgia about underground films. My film had been reviewed by a couple of different smaller, outlets and that kind of thing. And it kind of had some interesting talk and stuff online when it was spoken about, and it was mostly positive. A lot of people liked that I was trying to tell a more unique story than your traditional sort of slasher film, and trying to do something kind of tongue-in-cheek and satirical. And then I kind of got excited again, and I started reaching out to distributors again. And SRS Cinema out of New York, who's been distributing films for 30 plus years. They started out distributing stuff on VHS in the late 80s, early 90s kind of thing. And they specifically focus on, shot on video and weirdo cinema and just kind of strange stuff. And I felt well, Clowns kind of, it fits that. I kind of stalked their website and looked at their different films that they had out. And I thought, well, mine's, my film's good enough. I could be objective about my film. I know it's not perfect. It's not perfect by any means. It has a lot of, flaws, and people could definitely tear it apart if they want to, and they definitely have on Letterboxd and whatnot, and that's fine. At least they watched it. But I knew that it was like it was good enough for a release, in that manner. Like, it seemed like there was people that were fans enough of it and liked, and it had enough compliments about aspects of it where I was like this, yeah, like I'm sure one of these, boutique label distributors or underground labels will put it out. And I sent email out to the owner of SRS Cinema, and he said he really liked it, and it reminded him of like the movie the Town That Dreaded Sundown, but with like killer clowns, and and he was like, yeah, let's do this. So I ended up signing a distribution deal with them, and it kind of, clowns got a new life, and I had a new connection with distribution. And Ron Bonk, who runs SRS, said, basically, hey, anything else you make, bring it to me and we'll see what we can do. And I kind of had that sort of outlet now where, like, if I make something, like, I at least know there's a good chance I could get it released somehow or another, um, and get it to a wider audience, because that deal included a limited edition Blu-ray. It included a wide release DVD that's available at Walmart and Amazon. It's streaming, basically anywhere you can really think of it. It's streaming. It's on Tubi, which is a great avenue for people to find just really anything. Tubi has everything. I mean, such a variety on there. So for people to stumble upon it, there is a great thing. And plus, I can share it to people if they are interested in checking it out. I can just send them to Tubi or Amazon or wherever, and then if they want a physical copy, I can say, hey, it's online anywhere where good movies are sold. And yeah, so when I made Spooky, then I learned, I was like, okay, well, now I have a potential, end goal. I was like, I have this connection now, and I know that, you know, uh, distributors might want it. They might want whatever I do. There's a potential there, just having this kind of like possibility. And so Princess Spooky was kind of made with the idea of, no matter what happens, at least like there is somewhat of a fan base for like what I do. Like, I know that there's people out there that like clowns now, and if I put this out here, however it goes out, like there's a good chance it'll get seen. And I also feel more confident in my abilities because I feel like the film is better put together, better edited, it's better made. It's I feel like a stronger just product, and the story is just, if someone likes, kids versus evil authority figures, then Spooky's for them. If people like schlocky killer clowns, that's for them. But I know at least like the quality I learned, like I was able to, the film techniques in general and editing and all that stuff, I know that they improved and it made me feel better as a creator. And I kind of stopped overthinking it, basically. Like I was too judgmental of myself in a harsh way, where it's like you kind of got to be open to like criticism. And so I learned so much from just that whole process. I mean, that like, now this going on 10 plus years of, film 1 to film 2, it's like a whole new world. Now I can't, with film 3, whatever that is, it's going to be, it's going to be crazier. It's like, it's what you hope to do, to just keep going. I've just been very fortunate enough to continue.
So Princess Spooky definitely feels a lot more intimate as far as like the scale. And you kind of touched on this a little bit, but what would you say was kind of like, what did you change between Clowns and Spooky to kind of bring down, like maybe the amount of crew you needed to use or the amount of cast? I think the casting was the most noticeable thing for me, because I know you had a lot of extras and stuff like that on Clowns, whereas this, you kind of stuck mostly to your core audience. So I'm just curious, like, what was your thought process going into kind of, being able to still tell a big story, but do it on a smaller scale?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on it right there. It's you know, it's more intimate. It definitely is. You got this kind of pinhole into this world. You know, you got this very specific view at these very specific characters, and the implication is much larger. And you know, part of that, again, trying to wrangle as many people as there were with clowns. I mean, by the time that film was over, with production and everything, and it was out and I was self-distributing on DVD and whatever, was we had over 100 people involved in that project, which is a lot, and especially for, like, you know, 21, 22-year-old me at the time, trying to wrangle that. And you know, I had made a couple of short films that I directed and edited, and I'd written quite a bit of different things and all that. But so for me to just at 21, 22 decide I'm going to jump on a feature film is kind of like madness. And to have that many people involved was even crazier. So the fact that we even finished the thing, and you know, we have something to show for it, is insane. It's kind of crazy and wild to think about, especially since we had no money at all. It was all kind of done out of like passion and love, and the money that was spent was out of my own pocket, and even that added up is like nothing compared to, like, you know, a quote unquote real Hollywood film, as it were, or even a micro budget film for like the Hollywood standard, whatever. It's literally weird, you know, cardboard and duct tape, you know, that's our thing. So with this film, I knew with Spooky, I knew that I wanted to not stress myself out as much. Because I mean, again, it's like with both films, I mean, it literally is years of my life dedicated to each of them, and I know you know what that's like, because you dwell on each part of the film, and when you only have yourself to rely on, it can be really draining, and really tough. It's you know, you wanna sometimes you want to quit and you think, am I wasting my time? But if you've already, you know, dedicated so much time to it, it's like you have to kind of bulldoze through it. So I knew that if I was going to do this again and dedicate, you know, literal years, I could already tell. I was like, if I do pre-production now, and then I schedule the shoot for this, and then I edit, I know it's going to take this long because I did it before. And then my sound guy, if I get the same sound guy, I know how long this is going to take. I was like, I knew it was going to be like a minimum of like, you know, year and a half, 2 years, really. So to kind of alleviate a lot of that stress, I was like, well, we need to go with my motto that a lot of people follow, and it's KISS, keep it simple, stupid. I figured, you know, small cast, which was sort of easy because the story itself was inspired by drawings my niece had done. My niece and my sister were living with my parents, and when I was living with my parents still, and I used to babysit my niece, and she came up with all these different characters, and the way this would come about is I would babysit her, and we would color and draw and write, you know, just, you know, having fun, getting kids to be creative. And I would ask her to name her characters. She would come up with these doodles and different things, and she was a fan of, like, you know, Scooby-Doo and Coraline and all these spooky cartoon things, mostly because I would show them to her. I was the cool uncle. Like, I'll show you the spooky stuff, like, you know. And so she was, you know, a big fan of those things. And she loved Halloween as a kid, and you know, as a small child, she would just draw. She'd draw pumpkins and skeletons and all the cool things, but she would just draw, you know, all sorts of weird things, and I would ask her to name them, and we came across the ideas of some person named Princess Spooky, which was essentially like a goth Disney princess that made friends with spiders and weird creatures and whatever, and it was like a witchy kind of young girl character. And I thought that was really cool, and I would kind of like, because I would ask her, I'd say, okay, well, what's this character's name? All right, what does she do? Who's her best friend? What is, you know, oh, what's this animal over here? What is this character's name? And I would convince her to, like, tell me stories, and I feel like that's so important for, like, children in general, like, you know, to get their brain working. And my niece is just so smart, and she she became so smart so fast, and I basically helped raise her, and so to spend time with her, and she would let me keep her doodles. She's like, okay, you keep this, Uncle Tim. And so I kind of kept this stack of different characters that she had named, and I had helped her kind of create stories with. And I had a folder of them, and I thought, like, some of these names are really cool, and some of them were like really funny. Like the one character she came up with, she said it was a three-eyed cyclops, and I had to explain to her that doesn't make any sense. I was like, a cyclops has one eye, and if it has three eyes, that would make it a triclops. And she's like, oh no, it's a three-eyed cyclops. Like, that's what that is. And she's like, 5 or 6 or whatever at the time. Like, okay, like, sure, that's what that is. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I kind of kept that away. And then I just always thought, like, when she got older, like, maybe her and I could write like a children's book together, something we could co-author or something like that. Because she continued to be interested in art. And, like I said, I come from a family of artists. So now that legacy continues. I mean, she was partially raised by my dad, who is a very talented artist as well, and Sophia's father is a musician, and then I'm a filmmaker, and so she's just creative on her own as well afterwards. From being around all that, and she would beg to be in my movies, and she was too little at the time for her to be involved with anything yet. And I thought, well, why not do like some sort of like dark fantasy at some point? I'm a big fan of like Return to Oz and The Labyrinth and The Dark Crystal. I mean, all these iconic like dark children's fantasy films that are like, you could consider them horror films. I mean, a lot of them. And there's some pretty terrifying stuff that like modern studios would not put in their films, and I feel like that's a real shame, because it's a real special kind of movie that all those films kind of encompass, a special kind of genre, I should say. And I'd always kind of wanted to do something at least with that kind of flavor. And then so I kind of had all these different ideas from my niece and these characters and different things, and every time I'd see her, even after I moved away, she would ask me about like, well, when are we going to do something with Princess Spooky, or when are we going to write that book, or when am I going to be in one of your films? And I pitched her the idea in 2021 of like, hey, why don't we make a movie using your character Princess Spooky? You play the character, and we'll kind of write it so that it's a more grounded sort of like fantasy kind of sci-fi vibe, kind of we'll do a different thing with it. And in my head, I kind of, one of the first things that popped into my head for the film was the idea of a little girl standing on a hill dressed as a witch and looking out in the distance and seeing 2 nuclear cooling towers. I just thought, what an interesting visual it was. I had like a dream about it. And I thought, wow, how would I, like, what would the story behind that be? And I was like, well, we'll use that name, Princess Spooky. That was kind of a witchy character, kind of spooky, and obviously. And I was like, so why not that? And then being that I'm from Northwest Indiana, it's like that's a very industrialized area. There's all sorts of factories and odd smells depending on where you go. And, it's kind of gritty, it's kind of gritty and gross at times. And I thought, why not mix that idea, this industrial Midwestern kind of wasteland in a way, with the idea of some sort of supernatural force or sci-fi or, magic or whatever, but really ground it, to like have it kind of make sense, I have this character that'll be, her nickname is Princess Spooky, and, and it kind of came from there. I was like, literally filming the environment, even out here in South Bend area, a lot of it looks very similar to Northwest Indiana. We have a lot of train tracks and everything across Indiana. I mean, we're like one of the main states that all these train traffic goes through, crossroads of America and all that. And I was like, I love that feeling, that kind of idea. It's almost like I'm a huge David Lynch fan, so Eraserhead comes to mind when I think about this kind of gritty, dark, industrial vibe, like this kind of the sounds, the soundscapes, the idea of rust and decay and just kind of this nastiness, but mixed with this sort of wholesomeness, this wholesome kind of family that's kind of off, almost like an Addams Family kind of vibe maybe. And it just kind of amalgamated into that. And there's some satirical elements in the film. And I wanted to imply a bigger world with some of the characters, and having the crooked cop and having the businessman at the beginning, and this sort of MacGuffin of this suitcase that has this element that's not from Earth, and kind of again implying this much larger scale, even though we're looking through a peephole. And I kind of felt like that was a good way to go about it. It was just kind of structurally, like, how do I imply there's so much other stuff going on? And we talk about small casts. Like, not only was there a very small cast, but a lot of the cast doubled as crew members. We had Tony Panic plays a homeless character in the film. That's a very helpful character to the main two girls. And he was also running sound a lot of the days. We had a total of like a little over 2 weeks worth of shoot days all spread out over the summer of 2022. And so he was one of our actors, and he was there acting for, I believe we shot both of his scenes in one day. But then multiple other days, he was like a production assistant / on-set sound. I was doing all the makeup effects and directing. We had multiple other people be on-set sound occasionally. We had a guy named Aristotle who was in a band in Northwest Indiana. And so he kind of knew a little bit about recording sound stuff. And he was on set a few days. We had one of our other lead actors who played the villain, Dave Inez, his friend, a younger guy that was interested in film and television and radio. And he came on set, and it was kind of like, that was the only role that was like juggled a lot, was the on-set sound, which is, as you know, not the best thing to mess with as far as that goes. It's kind of it's toughy, but we had good equipment, and we had fairly consistent crew. I had an assistant director this time, which I made sure that I had, because my first film, we had an assistant director who then dropped out shortly before filming began. And I highly recommend you always have an assistant director. That's one of my number one piece of advice for anyone who wants to make movies. Make sure you have a partner in crime, as it were, because that made it 2 times harder making Clowns. Whereas this time, having an assistant director, Ben Tamara, this time around, he was someone that was an extra in Clowns, and his family let me borrow their generator for our outdoor scenes for Clowns. And he's a very talented filmmaker and videographer on his own. He was on board as assistant director, and he helped make things go so much smoother. And that, in conjunction with the fact that our main cast of characters really consisted of a total of about 5 people as the core cast. And then there was some side characters and that had like 1 or 2 scenes. And this one was one where I had a lot of family members involved in this one, which when I was in film school, I had a producing teacher who kind of made me feel bad about having my family involved with my short films, which you should never let anyone make you feel bad about that. You can only get the people to work with you that you can get to work with you. And if it's your family, do not feel ashamed about that. That is such bullshit. And I'm so sad that producing teacher acted that way. He was like, "Oh, I see a lot of Wolaks involved with this," and kind of implied like I should get like, quote unquote real people to work on it. I was like, yeah, if I had money, I would pay outside people that, were even more, knowledgeable, instead of people that are just interested, but it's not their passion. Like, then I would do that. And this time around, my film involves my niece, of course. This is her film debut, and it was one of her dreams to be in one of my movies, which she was very excited about. Again, she's a very, very smart girl. She so great to work with, and understood what we were doing, and the process, and she was learning so much as well. And I hope that experience continues to inspire her to do whatever it is she wants, which is just such a fantastic thing. It was like, it's one thing when you make a movie with people and you feel like a family. It's doubly so when you're working with family. You feel a closeness even more so. I was able to also have my parents are both involved with this film. My dad, who besides being an artist, he's always been interested in doing entertainment, in anything kind of funny and crazy and weird. And so he was able to play the father character who's missing in the film. And so we shot his bit part, and it was just so so fun again, and it made it so much easier because it's someone that I've already made cool shit with before. And um, it was a very personal film. Besides it being literally intimate in the sense of the scale of it all, it was made literally with family and with family friends and with close friends. And so it to me, it doesn't matter if the film. It doesn't really matter if the film doesn't get like full distribution. Like I'm content with self distributing it. Um, there is something really cool happening in 2026 with it, but that's kind of on the hush hush right now. But I learned so much, and it made it so much easier to scale it back and sort of through my writing and imply a larger story. And I feel like it worked for the most part. I was very happy with the film, how it turned out. Again, especially when you take into consideration the context of the movie and how we made it with no money. I feel like for a film that was made with nothing but passionate people, we did a good job. And yeah, again, it was a learning thing, and now I know even more next time.
Going off of that, now I'm really curious about this question because, like, I don't know how old your niece. How old's your niece?
Well, so she's 13 now.
Okay,
But when we shot it, let's see, she
11 or 12.
was, she had to be 11. Yeah, she was 11 when we shot it.
Yeah. So, so you've worked with family, and I mean, you've even worked with your niece now. Like, I probably shouldn't say this on camera. I love my niece to death. She's one of my favorite people in the world. She wants to be in one of my movies
Of
so
course,
bad.
yeah.
I don't know if she's quite there yet. I mean, I would love to do that with her someday.
Yeah.
But what I'm curious about is like, what what do you think is the key to getting people to stick around, especially when they're your family or you're working with like young children, for an example? Because like I don't think people always they see the magic of making a movie and just like the allure of Hollywood and like, oh, this is so cool. But once you start getting into the weeds of actually making the thing, like, for cashing out, for an example, it took us 3 months to shoot that thing, over the course of, I think, 24 days, which was definitely a mistake. And I would love to explore, like when you were talking about clowns, just having so many people. But I mean, just manage like getting 100 people to stick around, all the way down to with Princess Spooky, just getting your kind of smaller cast and crew there to stick around. What do you think is the key to getting people to stick around for a no budget feature?
This is something that at Tribeca Flashpoint, one of our classes, one of the first things we learned was sort of not even. I would say it's applicable to life in general. It's not even like specifically film related, but uh, basically the idea of be fun to work with. Don't be an asshole. So I know from experience, because I've had a couple of instances where you feel like, oh, like they said they would do this, so they owe me, so I want to get angry at them, and you want to lose your temper. But um, you always have to sort of you have to stay humble and you have to be understanding. You also need to be a straight shooter with people. Don't promise to pay anyone if that's not the case. I never even tease the possibility if I really don't think that's possible. I tell people, if I have a project I'm feeling really passionate about and it feels like an urge that I need to make it, and if I have people I know that I've written the parts for, I have them in mind, I will always reach out as far in advance as possible to touch base to see if they would even be interested in being involved with it. And I kind of, it's almost like flirting. It's almost like finding a significant other, but it's, you got a lot of them. And you kind of need to make sure that you're all on the same page. And I guess the other part of it is, whatever the project is, you have to make sure that people like it. I mean, it's besides liking you, like if someone likes you as a person, they're like, oh, like this is my good friend and I love this person to death and I would do anything for them. But if that person asks, you to be in a movie and you read the script and you're like, this is really bad. I don't know if I want to be in this, or I don't want to be a part of this. Like it just comes across as bad. I guess it's like, that's where it gets kind of hard. It's like, you got to be realistic with yourself. You have to realize, you have to be as passionate about it as humanly possible if you truly want to do something. And if you do that right, your excitement will be the fuel that will excite others. And then you also kind of have to keep that momentum going. And it's such a hard thing to like explain properly because you don't understand it until you actually do it. Really, or if you have that urge, that feeling, that kind of like that fire inside to like, I need to make this. I will literally do anything to make this happen. And it's really all about, finding your people. It's really about finding your people. It's about being good to work with, being fun to work with, being realistic. Don't make promises you can't keep. Be willing to put in the work yourself. I don't ask anyone to do anything I wouldn't be willing to do for someone else. So don't, don't stretch yourself too thin. Don't ask for too much. Be realistic. I will say a helpful tip for anyone that wants to make something on a no budget, like I've done or you've done, like I would say, write a script based on who and what you have available. Don't write a script that's like, oh, this is the next Star Wars, this is the next Jurassic Park, and then expect to be able to make that in the middle of nowhere, Indiana or Ohio or Illinois or wherever you're at in the Midwest, for instance. Like, it's just not going to happen. You're gonna set the bar up here, and you're gonna be down here, and then that's gonna hurt yourself. that's going to possibly leave a bad taste in other people's mouths that were helping you with it, because then there's no finished product. There's nothing. Oh, well, that was a waste of time, because people, I like to think people are inherently good, and if you have friends and family that love you, then they're most likely going to be willing to give you a favor and give you a chance. But if you do something like that, you're trying to write, you're trying to make the next Star Wars or what have you, something that's realistically would cost millions and millions of dollars, you're letting yourself down, you're letting them down for the opportunity to put that goodwill into something realistic. Whereas if you write something like, if you have an uncle that has a cabin, you could say, oh, well, I could write a story about a cabin. And how can I write a story about that cabin that's realistic? What can I do differently that other movies with cabins has not done? And keep it small scale, maybe bigger implications again. You want to be looking through a pinhole into this world that you're creating, and keep it grounded, and only do things you realistically think are possible. If you know someone that's really good at special effects, and they're a good friend of yours, and you feel like, can I ask them if they want to collaborate on this? And if you do have some money you can give them at all, say you have like $200 to spend on that kind of thing, and you're realistic with them, there's a good chance they might be willing to throw you a bone. I mean, just be realistic. It never hurts to ask. Just don't be pushy. Don't be rude. Be excited. Make sure that your story, whatever you're writing, is it going to turn the people around you off from working with you, or is it going to make them feel excited, and is it going to make it feel like something worth doing? I mean, that's the main thing. You're your own cheerleader. You have to be your own fuel to keep going forward. It's a willpower thing. It's a friendships and family members, and does your family know someone that might be able to help out, or it's just ask. It never hurts to ask. And yeah, just kind of like every once in a while, make sure that you give updates to your cast and crew as well. Don't leave them in the dark. Always keep that communication open. You tell them, hey, this is how things are going, or can we change this? Let people know far enough in advance about schedule changes, about issues, just honesty. I mean, really, that's the best way to go about it. Yeah, honesty and being realistic, and just being fun to work with. Yeah, don't overpromise and and underplay it. Just yeah, I don't know. It's a kind of a hard thing to explain, because it just feels like once you start doing these things, once you start making things, and you have something to show for it, further down the road, that'll continue to kind of build your it'll build your reputation, your work. You want to have a good reputation of like, oh, this person was a lot of fun to work with, or this person really improved from this project to this project. I want to work with them. Like, this is really cool. And don't leave people in the dust, I would say, either, as far as like people you collaborate with. Like, always know that like if someone's doing something for you for like free or for a little money, because you're both down here and you're trying to climb that ladder, be willing to lend other people a hand. Don't just ride that elevator up with other people and not reach down and help someone else out. Don't think you're too good to help out your friends with their stuff if they've helped with your stuff. It's always got to be that kind of thing. Like, one of my favorite things about the newest film was I needed someone who was an animator for this dream sequence, this like nightmare sequence in Princess Spooky, and my initial idea was stop motion. And I'm a huge stop motion fan. I love stop motion animation. It's probably my favorite animation style in all of the styles that I've ever seen. I'll also explain. It's just my favorite. And I wanted something like that. And I know stop motion can be really time consuming. And I have a friend that does stop motion, but she was busy on her own short, and I didn't want to interrupt that process. She was kind of like deep in that. And I had helped her write the screenplay for that, like just format it and everything, really, and kind of brainstorm how to keep that simple enough for her to do. And so I kind of was like, well, I'd still like to do stop motion, but I got to find a different way to go about it. And by chance, one of the Indiana filmmaker Facebook groups that you and I are both a part of, this guy Dan Dillard, who was teaching himself computer animation, had shown a couple of different like test shorts that he had done for his own original character. He's writing in fact, he just released a book for it called Mortimer Grimm. And I saw his animation for this character, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. It's kind of eerie and spooky, and made me think of kind of the movie Monster House, but also kind of Coraline, but it was, CGI. And I reached out to him because he had posted in there about that he just wanted to know if anyone needed any animation for anything. And he was like not asking to be paid or anything like that. He just genuinely wanted to do something really cool. And collaborate and network. And, I let him know that I would definitely be interested. And then if he ever needs help making his live action films, he also makes live action film stuff. I said, I will be there. Like, I will help with special effects makeup. I will do whatever, and he's just down in Indianapolis. And so that was a huge plus. And I learned a lot about even that process. I created my own animatic to send to him. I created a storyboard and created an animatic with temporary sound and all the stuff and character design work and how it was going to be an animated version of this scene in the film and how that was going to transition. And just having that open communication with him was awesome, because then there came a point in the production where his animated sequence was done for this scene, and it's beautiful. I love it. It's fantastic, and it has that feeling of stop motion even though it's CGI. And there's sequences in the film where the cooling towers are there. They're in the background of a couple of different scenes, and then there's the main image that was the thing that kind of triggered the whole storyline, was Princess Spooky looking out, and there's the cooling towers. And that hill is across the street from my house, actually, and then that looks over this roadway, and there's just this perfect gap in the trees over here where I was like, that's where the cooling towers will go. So I shot all the footage before, before all the stuff got put in or whatever. And so I had all the raw footage, and I had a friend that was going to do the towers for it. And actually Trey Manchester had done the initial test footage. He did a single tower to see like, oh, something like this. And he kind of did it. It was like perfect. It was like, that was during our like test shoot of stuff that I had done. And it made me push further to actually get the film off the ground. And he was going to do the towers entirely for all the short little bits where they're there. But then he had something come up, and his life situation changed, so he was unavailable. Another friend stepped up, and he was going to take care of it, but he was having trouble with it, or he didn't have time for it anymore. And so I reached out to Dan, who had done the animation for the nightmare sequence. And he's like, oh, yeah, that's no problem. That's really easy. I can get that to you in like a day. And literally, like, in like 2 days' time, like, I sent him all the footage. I was like, and then I had like little templates about like, I'm thinking over here in this scene over here, and then over here, blah, blah, and have some like, the steam coming up. And he just knocked it out of the park. He even added like little blinking lights on the side of the towers, and just amazing, just networking. And again, that kind of, he was also someone that's into the same genre of films I am. He loves the horror stuff and the spooky things, and it just kind of fell into place. So again, it just comes into, honesty, and being straightforward with people, and not being afraid to ask. And that's kind of the way that I've navigated a lot of what I've done, is just, I will help anyone that's helped me. and make sure that that's fully understood. And then now it's a little bit, I don't want to say easy, because that's not the word, but it's become more accessible to me to collaborate with certain people because of my completion of both these films, and having that reputation of like, oh, Tim gets things done. Like, Tim's worked with all these people, and they get shit done. Like, and then I tell people when they're looking for people, like they're looking for a composer, poster artist, if they're looking for an animator, I point them to everyone I've worked with. If they're looking for actors that, are in the Chicago area, I point them to those people. And so it's just kind of, it's a team effort. I can't make these films entirely by myself. I did a lot on the films, but I'm still just one person. So, and my girlfriend was even, gracious enough to put in the time to be in the film as well. She plays the older sister character, and that was a special experience for her and I, in our relationship in general too, because it was just like that sort of collaboration in a different way. It's like, we're already together and everything else in life, and then to be able to experience that that different kind of working together. It was really special. You know, there's a lot of everyone butts heads on a film set, but it was like this time this film set felt a lot. It felt like going to camp. You know, like with it was just like, oh, all right, let's all right, we're doing this now. We're wandering around. Oh, there's blood over here, and you're just kind of having fun. So it felt like a much more lighthearted set that was less stressful, and that's part of it too. You don't want a stressful environment, so that the stress will scare people off. You know, especially if they're not as into filmmaking as you are. If they're not as invested, which this time around, everyone in the film was like actually people that wanted to be involved with like film stuff. Like I said, my dad, he always was interested in entertainment. He used to dress up as a clown for kids' parties. He used to do magic. He was a magician. He used to dress up as Bozo the Clown and do magic for like my cousins' like birthday parties and stuff. Santa Claus, all this kind of thing. So he was kind of used to hamming it up. So it was really easy for him to kind of like jump in and be this kind of almost mad scientist like. And everyone else in the film, we had Dave Inez, who was in Public Enemies, in a scene with Christian Bale. He's actually like one of the reporters that asks him a question on like the staircase in one scene. Dave's very serious. You know, he's a radio DJ. He's also a referee for some local wrestling federation things. He's a madman. You know, you got to get those crazy people in your films, and he's also a family friend. He's known my parents for 30 plus years. He used to work in public broadcast television. So, I mean, these are people that are professionals that I worked with on this. My friend Jake that plays one of the hazmat guys. I went to film school with him. Super talented actor, writer, comedian. He has a YouTube channel called Whiskey Written. They do these hilarious like live streams every other week, I think it is, or every week. Just so funny. And Blaine Smith, who is a very talented music video director, editor, filmmaker, writer. He plays the other hazmat guy. These are serious people, so I was very lucky to have them on board. And again, being honest with them, just, hey, if you need any help with your projects, I'm there. Like you can count on me. like I owe you my soul. You like you came out here and you let me get you into these weird scenes, and you're hot and sweaty and uncomfortable. You're in these hazmat suits, and I just want to make something crazy and have fun while doing it. And if this is the kind of thing that you're interested in, like, find those people because they exist.
Now, you've been in the unique position where you decided to, I don't remember if you crowdfunded Clowns at all, but you decided to do some crowdfunding for this. So I guess my biggest question is, do you think it was worth it?
So it's interesting with the crowdfunding thing is I did attempt it with Clowns, and we basically got like nothing. I would say we got nothing. I mean, there were people that donated, but it was like such a like insignificant amount compared to what we were trying to raise. Like probably less than a couple hundred for Clowns. And then with Spooky, I think, gosh, I know you were one of the people that did donate. Yep, you got the Blu-ray. Yes, indeed. Yep. Yes, indeed. You got it. So, and I appreciate anything anyone can give, and I appreciate you. And it's tough with crowdfunding. I find it frustrating to do crowdfunding. I don't like it, at least from my position, because I guess it goes along with like the honesty thing. There's a lot of hype that goes into a lot of those campaigns where people get a lot of money. There's things that I feel like that are disingenuous sometimes that are advertised on there, or like the idea of like a film where someone's like, oh, the $1,000 tier, like you'll become a producer and you'll be featured in the film. It's like when you're in a movie, if any money's being transferred, usually you're being paid to be in the film. You shouldn't pay to be in a film. And the fact that people do that, I feel like, is strange, first of all. I also don't like the crowdfunding I see for fan films. People make so much money off of doing like Batman fan films or a lot of the horror fan films, like the Jason stuff. And I don't like that because, again, it comes to being disingenuine. These are getting, thousands and thousands of dollars in ways that I don't think are that legitimate, or films that feel half baked. And not to not to crap on any particular films, but I feel like it's just kind of the environment that the crowdfunding platforms have cultivated. I don't think it's any of the creators' faults necessarily, the way that it happens, but it's discouraging as an independent filmmaker with original ideas to go on there and try and hype people up and say, oh, pre-order my movie and my poster, and and again, I think it goes with, like, I like keeping things pretty simple when it comes to that kind of stuff, and that's why I tried to keep it simple with both Clowns back when I did that over 10 years ago, and then with Spooky. Is just like, I want you to like do you want to pre-order the film, because that's the product. Like, that's, I don't give a shit about, like, you pay me and then I'll let you be in my film, so I'll write a special part for you. Like, that feels like that's disregarding the art form of filmmaking. Like, you're just kind of like, that's not really true to what the me, the writer director, wants to make, then, if I'm doing that. And I think part of it also is the sex sells thing on crowdfunding. I noticed that as a horror fan in particular. I know it's a weird category to be involved with, because sometimes it feels like the focus is on the wrong thing. Like, you're making a horror film and you want to make something spooky, scary, but then you have, for some reason, the focus is on just the just the actresses, and you don't know any of the story. You get a title and you get the actresses that are in it and the actors, and the focus is not on the story or about, like, the quality of whatever the film is. It's strictly based on, like, some other aspect. And again, it feels disingenuine. So you see these things that'll come out and be like, oh, this was funded and it had $50,000 or whatever, and then you see the trailer for it and you're like, what? Like, this money went into this, and what's the story? Why the quality doesn't look like it's there? And so it feels a little bit lopsided as far as, like, what are you, what, as a creator, is it worth the time to put any effort into trying to do a GoFundMe or Kickstarter or what have you, or Indiegogo? Like, it's tough. It's very tough. It's hard to make anything substantial on there without being kind of shysty. I guess it feels like you have to know someone, or you have to have a certain person involved with the project, or it's really, really tough doing it with, like, a completely, like, I just want to make a good, weird film. Like, it's hard. You can't just do that. I haven't seen anything that's been successful that's been like that. Like, oh, this original film. Like, it's always tangentially related to either, like, a group of, actors or actresses being in it, or it's highly hyped up or sexualized, or something other than the actual movie itself is the reason why it gets funded. And I don't like that aspect of crowdfunding. And I'm not going to try and pretend that what I make is in those same molds. So it's tough, because then if you don't try and do crowdfunding, it's like, how else do you get money? And that's the real barrier to, like, making a certain quality of film. you get stuck otherwise, and that's why you kind of got to just try and do the best with what you can and hope that you get the attention of the right people where, it, the story should be the most important part. So if your film is shot on a Walmart camcorder, but it's a really well written film and you know how to frame things up and it's got good audio, like there's a chance you'll get someone's attention that like matters and that can make things happen for you and that has a similar mindset that was once you, in that position. Again, I feel like any good creative type in whatever genre they choose or whatever it may be, like they'll, again, honesty and the kind of self-awareness, they'll reach out and they'll be like, oh, there's a lot of potential here in this person, whatever. Like it doesn't really matter what the budget is for your film as long as like the writing is there and people connect with it on some level. Crowdfunding, it feels like, really it's the third time I think I've tried something with crowdfunding of my own project. And it was the third time with Spooky was the most successful, but that's not saying much considering it was still like under $1,000 was raised out of I think I put the goal at like 3 or 5,000. I can't remember anymore. But the idea was to set it low so that if we did get any traction, then obviously you could keep the donation open for longer. And again, I kept it simple with like just the idea of like pre-ordering, and especially I felt like now I was like, well, I have another film that already has distribution, so I can use that as leverage to like add to legitimacy, and people could pre-order the new film and then they could also pre-order it and get a copy of the first film as well. And it's hard to reach outside your own bubble is the other thing. Even if you do raise a decent amount of money within your bubble, at a certain point it's just going to stop because you only know so many people, and then you need to somehow reach outside that, and that is so hard to do. I mean, Clowns itself being out and having distribution worldwide now, it's only just recently in the past year or so really sort of gotten outside of the bubble of like, oh, that's someone I know that reviewed that on there on Letterboxd or, whatever. In fact, there's even a recent review on there that kind of tears my film to shreds, which I think is hilarious. I actually want to reach out to the guy and see if I can use some of his review as like quotes on the box for like a future release of Clowns because it's so funny. But he thinks that, he thinks that most of the positive reviews on there are from friends and family, which they're not. All the positives on there, except for like one, are all like random people. I have no idea who they are. They're like in completely different states or countries. And then someone else that was talking with this commenter thought that we had more money than we did. They thought we had crowdfunded this film back in 2014, 2015, and that we actually had like money. and was like, oh, I bet the people that bought their producing credits on here probably feel bad getting suckered out of $1,000. Like, I wish I had $1,000. like it's so funny to me. Like, that's, I think if anything that also says something about the quality looks higher on screen as far as money goes compared to like what we actually had. Which I do agree. It looks like a more expensive film than it was. And that just cracks me up to no end. But yeah, I mean, crowdfunding, it doesn't work for everyone. It's a very finicky process. It's not guaranteed. It's hard. It's sort of depressing in my opinion, because it's like you kind of have to. It's like you have to be like braggadocious about it and like try and hype it up, and like I don't want to, again, like overpromise or oversell it. Like I'm very honest about like what I make and how it is, smaller scale, and it's not going to be, this huge thing. It's not going to have like a a big star in it or anything like that. It's like I feel like I would be disingenuous if I did some of the techniques that some of the other crowdfunding filmmakers out there do, and even more so now. I feel like the newest trend I've seen is people using AI art to crowdsource, which that's an even bigger lie outright than anything else. Like, you're just using AI art to basically swindle people out of money, and you're also screwing a lot of artists. So it's tough. It's something I don't think I'll try and do going forward. I mean, it would take some convincing. I mean, if I felt like one of the platforms would be conducive to my whatever project I do next, then maybe. But it depends. It's a real conundrum, that's for sure.
So you talked about this a little bit earlier, but you have kind of a unique story where you found traditional distribution after years of self-distributing. I'm curious what that experience has been like for you, especially coming from self-distribution, because I don't get to talk to a lot of people who have done traditional distribution. So what has your experience overall been like working with your distributor on Clowns?
It's been really easygoing. I had never I had never experienced anything with distribution in this way before. And it's interesting with SRS because I knew about them through a friend of mine in Northwest Indiana. I had a friend named Ed who has since passed away, but we had a mutual friend named Sean who was also from Northwest Indiana, and he made a film called Dead at the Box Office. And he made that in Northwest Indiana, like in, I want to say it was like 2005 or 2006. And it's a really fun little zombie film. And I'll have to get you a copy of it sometime, but it's been out of print for a very, very long time now. And SRS was one of the distributors that it was like potentially going to be with. And so my friend Ed had told me about this and said, "Oh, you should talk to Sean about this. And and you should look into SRS. Maybe like whatever film you do, whatever your first film is, maybe they'll put it out." And so I kind of had that in the back of my head. And I'd learned about SRS in like 2012 or 2013. And then when I finally made Clowns, I'd actually reached out to SRS in 2016. And if I remember correctly, I'd have to look at my messages again, but I don't think I ever even received a response at that time. When I sent out that initial query. And I just thought, oh, well, they're distributors, so they're they probably are inundated. They probably get a lot of people. I mean, it's a very niche kind of subgenre that I work in. Of course, no budget horror, but they specify, that's what they focus on. So I was like, oh, well, and I just kind of forgot about querying them again until 2020, I believe it was. And when I finally did, I got a response, and at that point it became very like quick and straightforward. Like, oh, well, here's what this would be, and it would be for 5 years. And this is what we need for deliverables, and here's the contract, and all that fun stuff. And something to note about filmmakers now that are, if you have a movie out right now, if you have a film you finished and you're looking for distributors, I did learn that there's a lot of people out there that are basically try and take advantage of filmmakers. It's a similar thing with like people with screenwriting. They try and take advantage. If a distributor tells you that you have to give them money in order for them to distribute your product, it's not legitimate, because that's not how that works. There's with SRS, I knew they were legitimate. I had looked into the history of them, and I trusted them, and I had added Ron Bonk, the owner of SRS. I'd added him on Facebook quite a while ago, and just kind of became online acquaintances, and kind of I would keep an eye out on like, what's the company doing now, what are they looking for, or would it be a good time to maybe ask again about this or that, or even advice, like as far as like what kind of films do you look for. And but yeah, when he said yeah finally, and he liked the film and he wanted to put it out, it was very quick. It was very fast, and it was interesting. Having a piece of work like clowns, having someone else's like marketing team and like art team like come up with a design for your work is really something special. You know, it's like a it's a I mean it's a part of the evolution as a filmmaker. It was really interesting. Their marketing people came up with a different wide release poster artwork and case for the wide release DVD. They had an artist named Max Cave, who's this Italian artist who's worked for Lionsgate and Universal and done all these other like, you know, big studio company artwork pieces for like t-shirts and posters and merchandise in Italy. So it was like having this guy who's like, you know, he's going to be a part of horror history because he's currently making all these cool modern things and artwork for like these bigger companies. And then, oh, this guy's doing my Blu-ray case. Like he's doing this painting for my Blu-ray case, limited edition. Like that's so special. Like that's so cool. So seeing how like another company markets your work was really fascinating. And again, it happened fairly quickly. Um, and it's just been really positive. Ron is very communicative. I get to talk to him directly whenever I'd like to, and I can ask him any questions about like how's the film doing. They only in recent years had got that partnership where they're able to have their library of films available through Walmart, which is really cool. And Amazon carries it, Amazon Prime, which I was so glad that Amazon Prime got the film, because when I was self-distributing still, which I believe I spoke to you about this, how much of a pain in the butt it is to get your film on Amazon as an independent creator. You have to jump through so many hoops. It's basically like Amazon doesn't want you on there. They really don't like independent filmmakers. But if you get with a distributor who has a deal and they have their own stuff, you know, I mean, that's a totally different story. It's almost like, you know, if you're a type of person that's like really, really independent and you don't want a distributor and you want to go it alone, like a lot of people that are musicians do similar things, like it's going to be really hard for you to do certain things because it's a very tough learning curve to like get your stuff onto some of these streaming platforms. There's so many hoops, so much red tape. It is so stressful, and I hated it. I did not enjoy that aspect. The things I enjoy about filmmaking are the writing, and I've grown to love editing more than I used to, and I edit out of necessity, but I also really enjoy it, but only on my own projects. I don't ask me to edit anything. I like editing my own stuff. So anyone out there that definitely wants to hire me for editing, don't do that. Um, but yeah, it's tough, you know, when you're doing stuff alone and then you're dealing with self-distribution at that end with streaming. That's the whole pain. So to have SRS just have that automatically is such a huge relief, and to have that sort of open communication, and SRS is like they're one of the kind of smaller players in the grand scheme of things, but the fact that they're available at the same places the other places are, that evens the playing field. You know, if you look up Where Are the Clowns, the link to Tubi shows up in the IMDb and the poster. I mean, it's become a thing now. It's like which to speak more on the title, which we talked about earlier, you know, the working title for the film was Ku Klux Klowns. And it was that working title throughout production of the film. And I came up with a list of about 10 or so alternate titles because I was like, well, like I had two cast members on the film that just kind of said that they were uncomfortable with the film being called that, which is, you know, totally valid thought. But if you've seen the film, you know, the Ku Klux Klan's title kind of fits the vibe I was going for, with the idea of like, you know, those kind of people, the Ku Klux Klan, the neo Nazis, anyone that's like that, you know, they're, in my eyes, they're clowns because their thoughts are so laughably stupid, you know. And that was kind of that was part of the inspiration of it, you know. It was like the gimmick. So I came up with a bunch of other titles, and Beware the Clowns felt really marketable, like just that name. And I research every title of anything I write, because I don't want my film to have the same title of something that already exists. I really dislike that. I just don't like the idea of like uh, films sharing the same name. Uh, I feel like it helps you stand out if you have something that's not in existence already. And I was so shocked to find that there was no film called Beware of the Clowns, because I don't know, it just sounds like something that would exist. You know what I mean? It just sounds like something in the lexicon of like horror. Like, how is there not a film called this already?
I'm almost convinced. So there's a John Travolta movie that just came out like within the last year. It's called Cash Out.
Oh my
And I'm
goodness.
curious if it's not called Cashing Out because of my movie. Because
You
there's
could
no
be
other movie
right.
called Cashing Out. I mean, I'm very, very curious about that. And what's funny about that too is like, you know, if people are kind of struggling with titles, I didn't come up with Cashing Out until like a month into shooting.
Yeah, yeah.
I had no title for that movie until we shot it.
See, that's interesting. You didn't even have a working title, huh?
I had I had one working title. There was like this stupid phrase we would always say when we were kids. Like I don't even know what it meant, but it was keep it Vegas. And like we just kept like some I think one of my friends is like middle school teachers would like that was like their catchphrase. And then we just kept saying it over the years, and I felt that it just kind of fit for
Yeah,
the movie. But I got talked out of that. And then like during shooting, I just tried to come up with a bunch of titles. I don't even
yeah.
remember how I came up with Cashing Out, if I'm being honest, but like somewhere down the line I kind of settled on that. Not settled. I'm like, this is the
Right.
perfect title. You know what I mean? But like I definitely went through a bunch of them, but it's just it's interesting hearing you talk about the titles.
Yeah, it's probably one of the most interesting parts about filmmaking, I think, and it seems like such a small part, but a title can be a big deal. Um, but yeah, I still have there's if you look behind me here, you see this police uniform. There's a little cabinet over there, or somewhere over there. But there's I have the binder for Beware the Clowns, and in the binder, the production binder, there's the note card that's still in there that has all the other alternate titles. And there's like different amounts of stars next to each title that I liked out of the like dozen or so I came up with. Um, like I'll tell you, one of the other working titles for the film was Clown Law, which comes from, in the film there is a clown law, like there's a law against being a clown. And that was kind of a temporary working title. It's like the in between of like Ku Klux Klans and Beware of the Clowns, because I was like, I don't know. And it's funny you mentioned like the the film Cash Out that apparently recently came out, because there is a song called Beware of the Clown that just came out not that long ago by the punk rock band The Damned, which I think is hilarious, and it makes me wonder. And they're using it in the same way that I am, like in a political sense. They're even using it in that way, and it makes me wonder, like, has The Damned seen my film? Because if they have, that's awesome. I love The Damned. Like, that's great. But it's so weird. So now, yeah, if you look up Beware of the Clowns, not only does Killer Clowns from Outer Space show up because clowns is spelled with a K, but the Damned song, Beware of the Clown, shows up. And then there's a theme song that my friends did for my film called Beware of the Clowns. And that's by a band called The Next Two Bands. So it's so weird. You talk about titles like, I mean, was this song going to be called Beware of the Clowns? And then they called it Beware of the Clown. And then clown is spelled with the C with their version. But That is fascinating. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's like a, especially the political aspect of like their song. Like, um, it's like, is it in the zeitgeist? You know, like is it like some sort of like pop culture osmosis where like everyone kind of had like a similar idea? Um, and in a real world thing, like the year after we filmed Beware the Clowns, there was the clown sightings of 2016, which we had people messaging the Beware the Clowns Facebook page asking if we were those clowns. Like there were people from like Alabama and those areas where the schools were affected, like shut down because of threats from like internet clowns. It was super weird. It was a super weird time. And then there was even a news segment where there was a press conference where there was like cops talking about clowns. And in my film, there's a press conference with the cops talking about clowns in the area. It was like I told the future, you know, it was super surreal. And then like the fact that like, yeah, just some like real life and like, I don't know.
See, you're opening up another can of worms. So I watched Cashing Out for the first time in like, I want to say at least 3 years. And like, when you're an ambitious filmmaker, sometimes you like write things that you don't necessarily understand or know about. And there's some moments there in Cashing Out, like particularly with the father character and his disease. I specifically didn't want to pick cancer because I'm like, there's too many cancer movies. So I'm like, I don't want to make this guy go through cancer, even though it would have made a lot more sense. But just watching that film and just like the stuff that happened like with my mom later, because my mom ended up getting diagnosed with cancer uh like maybe 6 months or so before Cashing Out came out. And then just like watching her experience and then just like my experience of these last couple of years with some health issues and just relationships and this and that, I'm like, what a weird freaking coincidence. I think yours is probably like cancer and illness is probably not too like strange, but like the fact that you made a movie about clowns and like, just all this weird stuff happening, it's like, that would never happen. And then a freaking year later, we're watching it unfold all over the United States. Like,
Weirder because at that press conference with the police in like whatever it was, Alabama or whatever, like there was talk about like banning clown paraphernalia and like not letting people dress up as clowns. It was the weirdest thing I think that's ever happened to me. I was like, I wrote this jokingly, like, and then a year later, literally, like, it's so weird. And then there
because
was
you
like,
think like this isn't realistic.
yeah,
Like this would never happen. This
this
is
would
just a
never happen.
fantasy. And then just here we
Yeah,
are.
it's crazy. Yeah, it's so it was so strange. I literally had someone reach out to me, like a friend of a friend, ask if I was somehow involved with like one of the events that had happened about like some clowns hanging out by the woods by this apartment building in some other state. I was like, I don't even know anyone that lives in that state. Like I I don't have any money either, and I mean, I'm sure I probably could find crazy people to do this shit, but like, I why would I do that? Why would I endanger people's lives for my little film in Indiana? Like, no, these weirdos just exist on their own and created something that I somehow wrote a year ahead of time. It's so strange. Yeah, it's totally weird. Just yeah, and something I hope doesn't come to fruition with Princess Spooky things that I wrote. One of the things in there is it's about the idea of how I don't think oil companies should have anything to do with like having their hands in like green energy, like renewable energies. Because I have this thought process in my head about like just because of witnessing politically and things in the world, my my fear is that eventually the oil companies are going to realize that the gig is up and they're going to have to throw their hands in the air and make changes or whatever. But my fear is that one day when that does happen, if that does happen, like if we move to nuclear energy, which is cleaner and all that, then like the oil companies and any of those people with fossil fuels, they should not be allowed to run those newly formed companies. Like, don't let them be in charge, because it feels like the thing that would happen is something like corporate espionage and whatever, and like maybe they would self-sabotage to be like, well, I told you nuclear is dangerous. Like, that's a scary thought. Like, they would create environmental disasters on purpose, because if a nuclear power plant ran appropriately and taken care of, I mean, it'll be fantastic and it would be so good. And so one of the things in Princess Spooky is that idea, and this corruption, and the idea of fossil fuel companies putting their hands in green energy in order to sort of self-sabotage it, and I hope that does not come true, but it just feels like the natural progression of things, like from a political, and I could be talking out my ass, but it just seems like a common sense kind of thought process from the everyman, like, well, these billionaires don't want to give up their power, but if they have to throw up their hands and do something else because of natural changes in society, then will they try and do something terrible with, these other power sources to make them look bad and be like, well, we were better when we had fossil fuels, like that's the real horror. That's kind of like where some of the satire comes in. It's like those sort of, fears. And yeah, it's so hopefully I didn't tell the future on this one.
So working with a distributor, one of the kind of the confusing parts or scary parts is obviously the deliverables, which you mentioned before. I'm curious what deliverables you needed to create for clowns with your distributor, and how did you go about, if there's something you needed to make that you didn't necessarily know how, like how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So again, with SRS, they're not one of the big dogs in distribution, but they definitely know what they're doing, and they've been at it a long time. It was pretty straightforward. It was basically, give us, the film in, I believe it's Apple ProRes 422, something like that. Yeah, it was like the highest quality, like highest quality lossless file type of that, and they wanted it sent on a physical external hard drive. I had to mail it to them. So it had that on there, and it had the special features, which was just a couple of there was bloopers, sort of / behind the scenes thing. There was some concept artwork that was just scanned in images and that kind of thing. Because then they built the menu and everything like that. Something I gave them that they didn't request, but I know a lot of distributors do. In fact, one of the ones, well, it's something that I have worked out for 2026. They want, a closed caption file. And I went through rev.com to get the captions made for Beware the Clowns. And that was a pretty inexpensive thing. I believe it was like, at the time, it might be the same now. I haven't been there a long time online, but it was like $1 a minute for English subtitles, and they give it to you in whatever file type you need for whatever the distributor asks for. And so I have that, and I sent that to SRS, and they decided not to utilize it, but I know that that's something that a lot of distributors want, so it's better to have it and not have than not have it. But it was a lot more straightforward, because I was also worried about, what are the deliverables? Are they gonna want some weird expensive thing that I can't afford, and then it's gonna be, because then that's different. That's not like you're paying them for something. You would have to pay for a separate thing. That's just like I had to pay $60 or whatever it was for the external drive at the time, and then mail that out, and then you never get that again, because that's their master that's their master drive for your product, essentially. So that was pretty straightforward. I know that some distributors will get more technical, and they want your like, for instance, like dialogue tracks to be like different than your the soundtrack, and they want you to get all specific. I haven't run across that type of thing yet. But again, I don't think I'm making advanced enough films for anyone to request such a thing. I'm still working underground essentially with no money, but I do have you know enough to where the films are warrant a release, which is nice. It's a nice feeling to have. I feel like when if I come across the situation where I need something special, I feel like it's one of the things that you just kind of have to do is just learn about it, learn what do you need to do and how do you figure it out, and do you know someone. And so if anything happens like that in the future, I mean, I know I'll tackle it when I get to it, basically. But as far as like on the scale I work at, the distributors that are probably gonna pick up your work if you're doing similar things to me, it's not gonna be as extravagant as some like a bigger studio. Because when you get to that point, it's not even something that you'll probably be the one dealing with. Is the other thing, because ideally you'll just have someone you can pay to do that, or but when you're doing it like what we're doing, it's so far it seems to be pretty reasonable, nothing crazy.
Did you have to go through any sort of like QC process or anything like that?
Well, see, that's another interesting thing too. Yeah, sometimes companies will get a little more stringent with that. SRS, the only thing I remember, because it's been a few years now, is SRS had a problem with the way that the aspect ratio looked. Because I guess it was kind of in fact, the DVD you have, I think it has the version that they wanted changed a little bit. Basically, it was like they felt like the people were kind of squished, like the aspect ratio, so they needed that kind of like adjusted. And so that was the only thing quality wise with that. Like they, watched it through and he was like, okay, this is the only thing. So it just really depends on, who you're going through, who picks up your film and how big they are and how, whatever genre your film is, kind of dictates what distributor is going to pick you up. I know, obviously, horror films have very large swath of opportunities to be released. And I will say, I don't want to say it's unfortunate because I love horror, obviously, but for filmmakers who want to make movies and they don't want to make horror, it's going to be a lot harder for you to get distribution. I mean, that's just unfortunately, that's just how it is. I just happen to want to stay in the horror and weirdo cinema.
It's funny. I made that drama, but like thinking about it for what you just said, I think maybe not the rest of my life, but at least for the near future, I think I only am interested in horror just because I think it's more marketable for one. But I think horror is one of the only remaining genres that exists where you can still tell interesting stories.
You just said exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say, and because with horror, yes, the horror aspect is important and make things scary, but in order for things to be scary, you have to care about the characters. So how do you do that? Well, you create fun characters, good characters you love to hate or love to love, and create that drama between them. And if you have a family that you really, care about within the film, you can still accomplish what you would want to accomplish in a drama, but then it's just living inside of a shell of a horror film. But you can still accomplish what you want to accomplish. It's and I don't know how you feel about filmmaking in particular, but when I think about the things I write, no matter how out there they are based on kernels of like, intense emotions in my head and feeling. It's almost like a therapy session to really get these out. And then you get to do it over and over again until the film's done. You get to write it, you get to shoot it, you get to edit it, and then you get it out there. And it's like, that's another reason why it's exhausting. But yeah, you can tell whatever story you want. I will tell you, in fact, I'll send you this script because I feel like you'll appreciate it. But the current script I'm working on that I hope to get off the ground is one that I don't think I'll direct if everything goes well. I'll just strictly be the screenwriter. But it's a film that deals with a guy inheriting his grandma's pumpkin patch, and he goes to live there, and it's sort of his last resort in life. He was trying to be a musician in the city, and then didn't work out, because how often does that actually work out? And he's thinking, am I worthy, though, to take up the legacy of my family's farm? And see, right there, that's the kernel and the drama in the film. Now, around that is a bunch of insane stuff that my parents ask what's wrong with me. So, but that's the crux of it. And that comes from a deeply personal place for me, the idea of legacy and family, and am I worthy of doing a certain thing, and how do I move forward if this doesn't work out? And it's like, that's the drama, that's the bit that's going to get people to hopefully like the character and root for him. And then the insane stuff happens to him, but that's not necessarily the focus. It's the characters, and them interacting and reacting to this outside force of nature that happens. So it's exactly what you said. You can tell whatever story you want within a horror film, and the horror film is always going to be marketable. It's like there will always be potato chips, there will always be horror films. That is a guaranteed. And it is and as you know, it's so hard to try and market a independent low budget comedy or drama or what have you. It's not as feasible. It's also harder to make those. And that's not to discredit horror films, because obviously I am a horror filmmaker, but it is easier to, from a production standpoint, to make horror films, because you don't need to be as precise about certain things. You can experiment a lot, and there's not a strict template. You can be weird and experimental, and there will be a certain group of people that will gravitate towards it, and ideally, one of the many distributors that are out there giving love to films of this nature will want it, and ideally help you gain traction. And so I feel very fortunate to have been able to make the two weirdo films I've made, and that they are finally, the films they're gaining some momentum, and it helps too that I'm also fortunate enough. Currently, I work for a news station, and I am a full-time writer. I'm a digital producer, so it's kind of, right now I'm at a point in my career where it feels very natural, to be doing what I'm doing, and that's the other reason why I'm so excited you want to talk to me, was to be able to let people know, they can do it. That's the main thing, that you can do it, and don't worry too much about what people think about your career choice. As long as you're being honest, being realistic, being a good person, and being a team player with whatever group of people you gather. Just kind of go for it.
I haven't quite figured out how to ask this question without just being straightforward. Have you made your money back? I know Princess Spooky's probably a little early, but at least on Clowns, have you made your money back?
Yes, I will say that. Yeah, Clowns has at least made its money back. The not very much money it was made with. So it's anything that happens now is it's fine with me. And even if it didn't make money back, I would still be happy, because it exists. It's its own reward. Having a finished product to be able to tell people. I mean, how many people can say they made a feature film when they were like 21, 22, and that it actually turned out to be a watchable piece of art that some people enjoy. And then how many people can say, oh, I've made 2 feature films, under the age of 40. So, I mean, that's, it's something where, I mean, it's hopefully going to bring more positivity and more opportunities for me to make better things.
What are your future goals for indie filmmaking, and what steps are you taking to try and achieve those goals?
So right now, as I mentioned, yeah, I'm a digital producer. I'm a full time writer for a broadcast news station out here in South Bend, and so my plan is right now to continue doing that. I'm doing that full time, and in the meantime, since Spooky has been completed and I'm self distributing, I am doing some events soon where well, this Friday, for instance, there's going to be a movie premiere called there's going to be a movie premiere for a film called Cult of Blood, which is starring Felissa Rose of Sleepaway Camp fame. And at that screening, there's going to be the trailer for Beware the Clowns and Princess Spooky are going to show there. It's at this place called Lang Lab in South Bend, and this is going to be a really great opportunity to help with my film career because there's going to be a lot of local filmmakers and people there and other artists, and I'll be selling copies of my movies and chatting with people, and so that's a step in the right direction. There's going to be a local filmmaker named Tim Richardson's going to be there who he's made a couple of feature films that are really fun, kind of silly parodies. You might have even heard of one of his films. It's called Velasic Park. So it's pretty, yeah, his mind is like, he's on the level, bro. Like, and he's like a teacher. He's like a film and media teacher out here in South Bend. So I'm going to be chatting with him and just kind of continuing to network, network where you're at. Again, find those like-minded individuals and really stick with them and be the person that you want to work with, just, yeah, be open to doing new things and learning. Never assume that you know everything you could know about your craft. Always assume you can learn more and that someone can teach you something. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to interact with other creators and continue learning. I'm writing. I'm focusing on the current screenplay I mentioned about the guy inheriting the pumpkin patch. That's kind of my main focus right now. I plan on completing that by the end of this year. And there's some actors that I've spoken to that I want to have involved in the film. And the main thing I'm trying to do right now is build a cast, essentially, of people that are interested and known amongst the horror community. Some people I've talked to at different horror conventions, so I have their contact info. And I want to try and build the project and come to a producer who I've known for about 10 years or so now. There's a Chicago producer I know who has a company out of Texas now, a production company, and he has partnerships with like Shudder and stuff like that. And so I've known this guy for a number of years, and I've reached out to him already, telling him I have this script I'm working on, and I'd love to pitch it to him. So I just want to let him know, and that's the next step. So next year, I'm hoping to have a sort of tentative team together, and again going to him saying, and I already have these locations I know because I have an uncle that's a farmer in Rensselaer, and he has friends, and we might be able to have the location out that way. And to be able to come to a producer and a production company and say, listen, we have these people involved, they're known, they have an audience of fans, this is the script, and I think it fits with what this producer has produced. I know a couple of directors that I want to reach out to who I want to get basically I want to get quotes from everyone about what their rates would be. And then I want to go to this producer and say, I have all this. And then I want to go to him and say, and these are my 2 feature films, and, I have this distribution and I can tell them about what I have coming up in 2026, and just trying to leverage everything that I have done and the people that would be interested in working on the project and sort of pre-packaging in that. So if I could come on there and just be like a producer and a screenwriter, that would be great. I don't, because I direct out of necessity is the other thing. I enjoy directing, but I don't love directing. That's not something that I would want to do forever. And especially like like I mentioned with editing, like I like editing, but I like editing my own work. I don't think I would ever want to be an editor on a consistent basis for like other people. Like maybe like a friend, like if you wanted me to edit something, like I would edit something for you, but like otherwise it's not something that's like the top of my list. Now writing, obviously that's the top. So um, it would make me so happy if this project I'm working on comes to fruition how I hope it does. And with I've noticed with the atmosphere and vibe of some of the recent horror films that have come out, like the movie The Substance um, with Demi Moore, I feel like the horror zeitgeist right now is sort of perfect timing for this script that I'm working on, and I hope that it all works out. So that's one of the big things, and just in the next few years in general, I'm not certain what's going to happen. I just have a lot of plans about what I hope to do. At the very least, I'd love to get this project off the ground, this current one. And I have a couple of other feature screenplays that I'm working on, which could also be potential other projects I could pitch to this particular producer. So it's and I only know this producer through networking again. I mean, this is someone that I became an acquaintance of back in 2014 when I was graduating film school. There was a producer named Tony Wash out in Chicago who was the person that actually he was the first person to ever distribute anything of mine. I had a short film called Mastication that was put out by Bloody Disgusting on Blu-ray on a compilation called World of Death, which is still going on today under a different name. I believe it's called Bloody Bites is what it's called. And I believe it's on Screambox, I think is what it's going on. So it kind of evolved, but Tony is a fantastic guy. And this particular other producer I was introduced to was because of Tony. And I've kept in touch with this producer and with Tony and this whole kind of Chicago group of horror filmmakers. And, it just feels like the right time to try and get there. Because before I didn't feel like I had anything to offer. And so that's really what I'm working towards now is I have this sort of, my pile of accomplishments and I say, hey, I've done this and I have my little pinky toe is in the door. It's like, how about we go a little further? So I'm hoping that something happens with that. And I have a good feeling about it. And if that doesn't come to fruition, I know at least in 2026, which I'll message you. It's a secret, so I'll message you about it. But it's gonna be it's gonna be good. It just feels like after doing this for over 10 years now, it feels like things feel like they make sense, like the way they're falling into place. It just feels like nobody's path is the same, but I will say if you just do a little at a time, it'll add up to big things, and you shouldn't think of it as a race. It's a it's a stamina thing. It's a can you last? Can you stay the distance? Can you make it all the way? It's not, let me get to the finish line. Like, I'm a filmmaker. Like, no, you just keep it going one day at a time, and it's things can happen.
So looking back to 21, 22-year-old Tim Wolak making his very first feature film, what final pieces of advice would you give newbie filmmakers, kind of with the knowledge that you have now compared to what you did back then?
Take what I learned and put that into whatever you're doing. Give yourself room to breathe. Scale back your cast for whatever it is. Write for what you have. Make friends with your local weirdos. Find your people, and don't be afraid to ask questions is the other thing. Don't be afraid to take a shot in the dark. I will give a great example of this, and I'm so glad that I had the balls enough to do it. I had a class where I was supposed to interview a working filmmaker, and at the time in 2014, there was a Canadian film called Wolf Cop that was about to come out, and I researched it, and I found out who the director and writer was. This very, very, very nice guy named Lowell Dean. And Lowell answered my questions. I reached out to him and I told him I saw the trailer and all the stuff for Wolf Cop, and I thought it looked fantastic, and I knew I would love it even before seeing the film. I knew I would love the movie because it just felt so like, I was like, the guy that made this must be like super cool. I was like, this guy's like, he's got the right mindset. I was like, it just feels great. Like, and the effects, the special effects makeup were great in it. And I mean, it's a classic werewolf look, and it just looked like so much fun. I was like, this is how movies should be made, And I took a shot in the dark, and I reached out to him, and he was very much the kind of person that I hope to become as successful as Lowell is. He's not known by millions and millions of people, but he is a working filmmaker who is making really cool shit with his friends and with some very talented actors. And the fact that he gave me the time of day was very inspiring. And so I would say that continues to go with my whole thing of don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to reach out to people who are doing what you want to do and ask questions. There are bad apples out there, but do not feel discouraged. I mean, I have dealt with some people who have not been the most fun to deal with, but there's always going to be that no matter what you do. But don't let those experiences negate the fact that you should ask questions and be open to learning just don't wait for someone to tell you it's okay to be a filmmaker. Just be a filmmaker. Don't wait. Learn the basics of storytelling. Even if you just want to be a cinematographer or a producer, learn how to write a screenplay. Learn the structure of a story, because it'll help you make sense of other aspects. It'll help you be a better, creator, no matter what you decide to do. It's good to learn all aspects to be well-rounded, and then, seek out your focus. I will also say, don't feel like you need to go to film school. Some of the greatest filmmakers that have ever existed never went to film school, or dropped out of film school, or didn't even graduate high school. So filmmaking is one of the last career choices where you don't need college. Like, there's no state exam you have to pass to be a filmmaker. You can just be a filmmaker. And if you're good, you'll succeed. And you don't even have to be the best filmmaker. That's the other thing that's best about being a filmmaker. You don't have to be the best in order to move up, because you can become the best while you're still working. That's just a fact. That's, you just start, again, ask questions and move forward.
Tim, this has been awesome. You definitely gave a lot of really great pieces of advice. Where can people find your work? Beware of the Clowns, Princess Spooky. Go ahead. Go to tell everybody where they can find those.
Sure, yeah. Well, so right now, if you look up Beware of the Clowns, you can watch it on Tubi. You can watch it on Amazon. You can buy it on DVD from Amazon. You can buy it on Blu-ray from SRS Cinema on their website, srscinema.com. If you want to find out about updates on Princess Spooky and where to buy that, I am working on getting an online store, but for now, if you go to Instagram and you look up Wolak Cinema, that's WOLAKCINEMA, Wolak Cinema. If you go on Instagram, find me. I just made a post recently about it. If you go on Instagram and you message me, I can get one shipped to you in the meantime. But Yeah, I will definitely be having updates about that. And I know it's a while from now, but in summer of 2026, there's something very special happening. And I am hoping to be able to let that cat out of the bag at some point here soon. But yeah, just find me, Wolak Cinema. Look me up on Instagram.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you, Alex.
If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And here's an interview with another filmmaker that's given a lot of great advice that I think you would enjoy. Thank you, and I'll see you on the next one.